I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
With plenty of local shopping opportunities available across the region this weekend, find out why buy local takes on added importance this holiday season.
As the major construction project continues on Duluth's Can of Worms, another large project looms in the near future. We'll have more on that with MnDOT's district engineer.
And Marshall Helmberger from the Timberjay and Tower is our guest for Voices of the Region.
Those stories and more coming up on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. And Denny, I hope you and your family had a good Thanksgiving holiday. For me, I'm still kind of dealing with the turkey.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. We had a great Thanksgiving. A lot of people at the house and thoroughly enjoyed it. So
all right.
It was wonderful.
Lots to be thankful for.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So let's begin with the headlines.
All right. Thank you very much, Julie. Well, the Minnesota Department of Health reported that a Twin Cities man was diagnosed with the state's first case of the Omicron COVID variant. The man had recently traveled to New York and had been vaccinated. Health officials say the man has recovered, but he urges folks to continue to take steps to prevent the spread of the COVID virus.
In related news, Cook County in the far northeastern tip of Minnesota recorded its first death due to COVID since the pandemic began in 2020. Cook County was the last of Minnesota's 87 counties to record a confirmed death due to COVID-19. The county is sparsely populated and boasts a 75% vaccination rate among adults ages 18 and older.
The Minnesota Public Utilities Commission approved Minnesota Power's request for an interim rate increase on Thursday. The decision will increase rates about 7% for residential customers and 14% for all other customers beginning in January. The interim rate will remain in place until final rates are determined by the PUC about a year from now. The average residential customer will see an increase of about $6 on their monthly electric bill during the interim.
And WDSE officially became the new owner of UMD's radio station KUMD on Wednesday. The frequency will remain the same, but the station will now be known as The North, 103.3 FM. No changes to programming are planned, and most of the staff chose to remain with the radio station. Watch for more on this story in an upcoming edition of Almanac North.
Well, the holiday shopping season kicked into high gear after Thanksgiving with Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales online and at big box retailers. Economists say it's a good idea to shop local, which has a higher return for the local economy. Here to tell us more is Monica Haynes, director of UMD's Bureau of Business and Economic Research. Monica, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Just what does local buying do for this region?
Well, we in the economic impact modeling world think of, often look at a number called a multiplier. So that relates to when a business purchases goods from its suppliers and hires local people, there's a certain amount of money that is recirculated within the local economy. And so one study that we looked at found that retailers and other businesses that are purchasing local products, locally owned businesses and small businesses tend to recirculate like 40-some cents on every dollar that they spend, whereas big box retailers circulate only about 14 cents per every dollar, and online retailers there's almost no local benefit whatsoever. So you can just imagine, if you're a small business, locally owned, you're more likely to buy products from local organizations and people, and hire local.
The money just keeps circulating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a much bigger bang for your buck.
Mm-hmm.
For many businesses, the holiday season is kind of the make or break season for them. Is this year more important maybe than years past because of all of the things that businesses have had to weather in the past couple of years with the pandemic?
Definitely. I mean, they have been put through so much over the past couple of years with first of all, shutdowns, and then now we're experiencing supply chain issues and a labor shortage. So local businesses have been really struggling. I mean, obviously, many of them are still doing very well, but there's a number of businesses that have had to shut down over the past 2 years. And so I think that this is, definitely a big shopping season.
You mentioned supply issues. So apparently local businesses then were affected by all the ships that got tied up in a variety of ports without the goods being delivered.
Yeah, I mean, small businesses and local businesses do have a disadvantage over these large retailers who can just outbid for products. And so it is more challenging for them to often get supplies that have, limited access or have supply chain issues. And so that's something that, while on one hand you might want to shop online because it's easier and it comes right to your house, but the economic benefits of shopping locally are really powerful. And so there's a lot you can do to kind of help those local retailers who might be having supply chain issues.
Mm-hmm. From an economic standpoint, how concerning is it to you that inflation is hitting people so hard and holiday shopping might not be as brisk as it's been in past years because every dollar is needed to buy the food, buy the gas, pay the heating bill? What could that potentially do to the holiday season and to our local economy?
Well, I think from what I have been seeing in the news and other sources, there really seems to be two kinds of holiday shoppers, because on one hand, higher income people are spending more this year than probably ever before. They're probably spending what they normally would spend on travel and other things. So I think there's a big population that has a pretty good disposable income right now, and those higher prices might not really be much of a hindrance. But then there's another group who have really been struggling through the pandemic and are continuing to struggle financially, and those people are really going to have a hard time paying for the higher prices on toys and gifts. And so that's why it's really important to make sure that if you are in the position to be spending more this year, you also want to kind of consider maybe donating to some local organizations that help families in need this year.
Monica, it seems like so many local businesses are looking for employees. You see job opening signs all over the place. What's caused that? What is this?
It's many, many things. It's a kind of perfect storm. We had the pandemic pushed a lot of people out of the labor force, especially older workers who were maybe, planning to retire in the next few years, just decided to do that earlier and are not planning to come back. Other people who had childcare issues have, been struggling to find childcare or just can't rely on that stable childcare over time because of the pandemic or other, work-life changes. There's all sorts of things contributing to it, and
it's a problem.
There's not one good solution.
Yeah.
That's definitely a story for another show.
Has the pandemic, did it accelerate the internet economy in some ways to the point where it's really impacting local businesses because so many people couldn't go shopping? They were ordering things, having things come directly to their house, and it's kind of nice to not have to go out. How can the local businesses maybe combat that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I mean, a lot of local businesses have actually really expanded their internet presence during this past couple years for that exact reason. People they have become used to it now. And even things like curbside shopping, which people thought maybe was going to go away after the pandemic was over, but consumers have kind of become accustomed to those conveniences. And now, unfortunately, if you are a small business, you still have to consider offering some of those online offerings and curbside and other personal shopper kind of conveniences that maybe the big box stores can provide. And so it is challenge for small businesses who maybe don't have the means to do that, but that's what consumers are looking for.
We recently had Small Business Saturday. Have you heard anything? Did it work?
I don't know the results of that, but it is it's a nationwide effort, and I have seen anecdotally local businesses saying online that they have had a really good showing. We've got the Winter Festival this weekend, and other up the shore there's the other Winter Festival happening, and I know that this is especially for local artisans. Even more so, those purchases are contributing to the local economy because they're not even purchasing the goods and goods from outside of the region. They're being made here in our area, and so that all of those dollars that you're spending are going right to the people that are there selling their products. So it's really impactful.
And how does our region stack up in terms of the local offerings that are available if people want to get out and do some shopping?
I think Duluth has become kind of well known now for having this really strong artisan crafts economy, and it's something that has kind of put us on the map in a lot of ways. I think even nationally, some of the leather goods and different types of products that are so unique to this area are sold all over the country, and it is becoming, I think, a part of the Duluth's identity and economy, which is really exciting.
We've got about 20 seconds. So how strong is the economy here in the Northland right now as this year comes to an end?
It is strong, but has room for improvement, I guess I would say.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Monica, thank you very much for being with us. Monica Haynes, Director of Bureau of Business and Economic Research at UMD. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's time now for Voices of the Region. Each week we hear from a journalist covering stories of interest in the Northland. This week our reporter is Marshall Helmberger with the Timberjay News in Tower, Minnesota.
This project is now set to be built at Towers Harbor, which is located right downtown Tower. And the Tower Economic Development Authority has signed a new development agreement with a firm that hopes to build 12 high-end townhomes there at the harbor, which the harbor actually connects Tower to Lake Vermilion through a channelized river, the East 2 River, which goes out to Lake Vermilion's Pike Bay. The project has been on hold since the city of Tower first signed an agreement with the company back in 2016. But a host of issues have held up the project since then. One of the biggest was the fact that the city of Tower, which had signed the original agreement to build the townhomes, didn't actually own the property it promised to convey to the developers under the deal. The city had transferred the property to the Economic Development Authority several years earlier, but that detail had been overlooked when the agreement was drafted. At the same time, a number of other historic claims or encumbrances on the harbor area property, including rights of way or easements from old railroads and utilities, which in some cases didn't even exist anymore. Now that work was finally completed earlier this year. And at the same time, a road project near the harbor, which is nearing completion, included the installation of utilities for the first 6 townhomes. So the developers say they're still interested in pursuing the project, and the pieces have kind of fallen into place finally after all this time. St. Louis County School Board decided this week that they're going to have to move forward with these major repairs on their own dime at this point. And that's to fix a number of issues at 2 of its newest schools, which were built only about 10 years ago. But shoddy construction and questionable engineering decisions have plagued the two new schools, and this would be the Southridge School located near Culver and the Northwood School located just north of Cook. The problems include things like a sinking floor in the band and choir room at Southridge and structural issues related to that, broken plumbing and sinking floors in the sports concession and bathroom building at Northwoods. That's out by their football field. In some cases, the floors at the concession stand have dropped by several inches, and that's created a host of related issues with things like plumbing and just the foundation. The district has been forced to make some costly modifications as well to two water towers that were built for the new schools. So the total cost of all these projects is expected to be in the millions. The district, as I mentioned, had been hoping that they could pursue legal action against some of these big contractors, which included Johnson Controls, Krause Anderson, and Architectural Resources. But those efforts so far haven't yielded any real concessions. A fellow named Beryl Novak. He's a longtime resident of Greenie. And to get to Greenie, you need to drive about 15 miles north of Cook and then take a left and drive about another 8 to 10 miles. And then you're basically in the middle of nowhere, otherwise known as Greenie. And Beryl Novak has lived alone in a simple 16 by 20 foot cabin there for the past 44 years. We've written about Novak once before because of his interest in grafting apple trees. But recently, the Duluth News Tribune did a personality feature on him, and the thing just exploded online. They've received over 1 million page views on the story in just a month. And that's the most that any story within the entire forum communications system, and it's many, many papers, have ever had on a single story. But it's reached millions of people around the world and has definitely struck a chord with many. Novak has gotten correspondence from as far away as South Africa, along with requests from people who want to meet him in person. He said even his UPS driver who stopped by the other day with a package said, "You're famous." So obviously for Beryl, this is pretty unusual for a guy who spent the last 44 years living by himself in a little cabin in the woods. But he's not sure why the story has attracted so much interest, but he speculates that many people secretly long for a return to a simple, low-stress lifestyle like the kind that he's made for himself here in the North Country.
If you have driven Interstate 35 in Duluth recently, you are well aware of the massive reconstruction project at the so-called Can of Worms intersection. And soon, the Blatnik Bridge between Duluth and Superior will need to be replaced. The Wisconsin and Minnesota Departments of Transportation will hold a virtual public meeting about the high bridge replacement next week. Here to tell us more is Duane Hill, MnDOT's district engineer in northeastern Minnesota. Duane, good to see you again. Welcome back.
Good evening.
The so-called Can of Worms project, of course, as most of us know, is well underway. A lot of the deconstruction has taken place already. How long will this project, Duane, take to completion?
So we've got 2 more summers of construction of the new bridges and roadway that go along with that project. So that'll get us through 2023. And then in 2024, we will be doing final cleanup and painting and things like that that will have minor traffic impacts. But the big
I think a lot of people are wondering, will the construction continue throughout the winter months?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. The contractor is able to continue with the bridge demolition until they're done with it this winter, and then they will also be building bridge substructures all winter long.
Mm-hmm.
Years of planning went into this Twin Ports Interchange project, trying to make sure that everything moved in the right place at the right time. How are things going so far as you look at the planning versus what reality is looking like?
It's going really well. The planning involved our contractor as we were doing the design work. And so they were able to build and influence the way that we designed the project so that it could be the 20 different operations that are happening at any one time could fit together seamlessly. And they've been able to stay on schedule, and we've had really good success with the work so far. We're a third of the way through the work, and it's been...
So Duane, how will the can of worms change? What will be different about the new can of worms, or whatever we're going to end up calling it?
It won't be a can of worms anymore.
Probably not.
We're trying to call it the Twin Ports Interchange.
Okay, we'll change the name.
So we'll change the name. In the old interchange, when you exited to the left, and we wanted to, that's not a normal movement for interstate, so we wanted to move all the exits to the right, so that's one of the big changes that you'll see. And then in the old interchange, we had those situations where you would go off of a ramp and merge into a single lane. And we've been able to eliminate, we called them blind merges, but we're eliminating those blind merges. So all the traffic will be able to continue on from the ramps in their own lane and then have a reasonable distance to merge and kind of sort out where they want to be. So that'll improve the safety of the interchange significantly.
A lot of people down in the Lincoln Park neighborhood were apprehensive about what things might look like during the construction. Are you getting a sense that their concerns have been addressed and that things are working pretty well?
I think during this last summer it was difficult because we had utility construction, and Lower Michigan Street was being worked on, and it was pretty disruptive to the neighborhood, along with some other local construction projects. Now we're in more of a steady state where we can work through the next couple of summers, and there'll be less disruption in the neighborhood.
Another big project which is facing the city of Duluth, Superior, and of course the Transportation Department, Department of Transportation for the state, that's the Blatnik Bridge replacement. There's a big meeting coming up soon to talk about that. Can you talk about that upcoming meeting, Duane?
Okay, so at our upcoming meeting we're going to be kind of stepping through another step of the environmental process. So looking at social, environmental, and economic impacts of a potential bridge replacement. And so what we started this process with is identifying what's the purpose and need of the project. And the main purposes are to improve the structure, to improve safety for traffic on the bridge, and improve mobility, especially on the Wisconsin end of the bridge. And then the other kind of secondary need is addressing access for bikes and pedestrians across the harbor. And so we've been working through kind of a wide range of alternatives, and we're narrowing that range of alternatives down so that eventually we'll get to a preferred alternative. And the meeting next week is just one of the steps in that process, where we're going to be sharing where we are with the number of alternatives and some screening work that we've done, and we're going to be asking the public to look, check our blind spots. And we want to make sure that we consider every possibility now, early on, and narrow down to a preferred alternative without having to back up. So it's really important to stop and check our blind spots with the public as we go.
The Blatnik Bridge turned 60 this week. Is that an average lifespan for a bridge? It doesn't seem like it's that old.
Well, maybe it doesn't, but actually at the time that it was designed and constructed, our design life was, what we talk about is 50-year design life. So it's already exceeded the design life of the original construction. And so, that's why we're looking at, the discussion about replacing it, is because it's exceeded its design life. We've been trying to manage it safely. We inspect that bridge every single year. We've had to restrict loads on the bridge to legal loads. We don't allow any permit loads across the bridge because we're concerned about those heavier loads reducing the remaining life of the bridge.
The Blatnik Bridge does not have emergency parking lanes or sidewalks. Do you think that'll change in a new bridge?
Yes, I think one of our needs for the crossing would be something like a multi-use trail. So bikes and pads have a way to cross on that corridor, and definitely on the truss span we don't have shoulders right now, and the new design would have an adequate shoulder the whole length of the bridge.
How important is it for Duluth Superior to have two highway bridges?
It's
at this point?
really critical. I mean, as we manage the bridge, whether it's the Bong Bridge or the Blatnik Bridge, there's times where we need to do repairs, and you have to sometimes close it to do those repairs. If we didn't have that additional bridge, there'd be no way to commute back and forth between the cities, or between the two cities, rather than the Oliver Bridge. Or, I mean, for freight, we have to send them all the way down through Danbury and Hinckley to detour around if there was no bridge.
So Duane, if people would like to participate in this online meeting, how do they access it and when is it?
Okay, so
Sorry.
I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head when the meeting is. I'm sorry, but if you Google
On Thursday.
Min.Blatnik Bridge, there will be a link to the public meeting, and we've been doing these virtual meetings using a WebEx platform.
With that, Duane, we've got to cut it short. Thank you very much. Duane Hill, District Engineer, Minnesota Department of Transportation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And that's our time this week, but you can keep up with our latest posts by following Almanac North on Facebook and Twitter. Check out the WDSA website for program updates, news about the station and upcoming events, and download the PBS video app to watch your favorite PBS programs anytime you'd like. And Denny, there are some predictions that we might get some measurable snow this weekend. I guess that we have to be a little bit prepared for that.
Sounds like winter's knocking at the door. Maybe 8 inches, I'm hearing, 10 inches. We'll have to wait and see.
All right, I'm optimistic that it'll be a shovelable amount.
I think so, yeah.
All right, thanks to our guests and to the crew here in the studio. With Dennis Anderson, I'm Julie Zenner. We'll see you next time.